What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Storycraft Society. Today, we're going to be crafting the Goblin Arrows Ambush from Lost Mines of Phandelver into your story. Welcome to the Storycraft Society, everyone. My name is Garmin, yes, like the GPS, and today we're going to be talking Lost Mines of Phandelver. For those who don't know, Lost Mines of Phandelver is the adventure that comes in the Dungeons & Dragons starter set, and the very first thing that happens in that adventure is the Goblin Arrows Ambush. So what you see here is the Goblin Arrows Ambush set that we're going to be crafting together over the next 4 weeks. But today specifically, we're making rocks.
All right, so for our rocks, we're going to need a materials list of XPS insulation foam. We're going to need a hobby knife, some large paint brushes, black Magic Craft base coat, which is matte Mod Podge and black paint. We're going to need some various craft paints. We're going to need a black wash, which is just watered down black paint with just a touch of dish soap, and then a tin foil ball. So when we get started first, we're going to start with a scrap piece of our XPS insulation foam. You can get that at Lowe's or Home Depot. I believe Home Depot sells the pink stuff, whereas Lowe's sells the green stuff that you see here. Both are the same product, just different color. And what I'm going to do is just start basically chopping out the general shape of the rock that I'm doing. Now, this seems like it could be daunting or a difficult task, and it was definitely something when I first started that I was more afraid of, but truly all it is just whittling a rock shape out of the foam. So I do a couple of different things to get that shape. The first one is obviously cutting with a hobby knife. Another one is breaking, like taking my thumb and breaking pieces of the foam off. And the last one is a combination of both, so I'll cut in a little bit and then I'll break another piece off. And you can see as I'm going through, I'm just looking at it for a second, trying to decide where would be another interesting place to make a cut. I try to avoid any big flat areas that are like very obviously not kind of that rock texture look. And then once I get to a point that I'm really happy with it, we'll move on to the next step. All right, so our next step is going to be the simplest of the build, but definitely the most important. This is where we're going to take our tinfoil ball and rub that all over any of the flat areas, so that's what's going to give us our real rock texture, not just in the shape, but also in all the flat, smooth surfaces. It's always a good idea to test your pieces out with miniatures also, to have some flat areas where not only is the rock on the table, but your miniatures and stuff can interact with them. All right, so now that our rocks are all ready to be painted, we're going to start with our Black Magic Craft base coat. This is a base coat popularized by Jeremy from Black Magic Craft, where you mix matte Mod Podge and black paint. I typically mix them about 50-50, but sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, and it doesn't truly matter. But then you're going to cover your rocks entirely with this. It's going to make them get nice and hard so that if you drop them from the table or anything like that, the foam will be a lot more rigid, and it'll give you your base black coat to start painting. So as far as painting goes, we're going to take a nice floofy brush. I like really cheap makeup brushes for this, and then a medium gray. And what we're going to do is just lightly brush over the top of the rocks. But the trick to this is you're going to actually take most of the paint off of your brush. So as the bristles brush against the high areas of the rock, it's going to leave a little bit of paint behind, but it's not going to go down into the crevices. You can see on the rock on the right how you can see the black lines of the deep recesses, but then the upper parts of the rock is in the medium gray. So for step 2 of our painting process, now we're going to go to a light gray. I'm going to take the same brush that I used for the medium gray, that way I get a nice blend of colors between the medium and the light gray. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to go, after taking a lot of the paint off the brush, we're going to go over each rock, just grabbing the highest areas in that kind of light, overbrushing fashion. So once you finish this step, you could absolutely be happy with how the rocks look, and they could go right to your table from here. I do that a lot when I'm doing rocks for my table, but for the tutorial here, I wanted to make sure to go the extra step so you could see all that you can do. So here what I'm doing is taking a black wash and going over the entire piece. So the way that I make this black wash is about 30% black paint to 70% water, and then just a touch of dish soap. And the key here is just a touch. Less is more in that particular department. Now what the dish soap does is it allows the black paint to fall down into the recesses. That way you're getting darker crevices. Then we're going to go back to our original medium gray, and we're going to go over the whole piece. But the trick to this time of doing it is to take almost all of the paint off your brush. Get it as dry as possible. Also try to throw your rocks on the ground, really smooth. But with that medium gray, go over the whole piece, and then do the exact same thing with your light gray. That's really going to bring a nice layer of depth, the darkest darks to the brightest brights for these pieces. One last little trick for you here is to just come down over the top of the rock with your brightest color. That way it looks like the sun is highlighting the rock from the top. And once you do that, you're all finished, and we have some rocks.
There you have it, folks. I think rocks are one of the easiest pieces of terrain to make, whether you're a beginner crafter or a long-term crafter, and they just get so much mileage. I feel like I'm very hard-pressed to come up with a battlefield that wouldn't benefit from having some kind of a rock feature. The very first piece of terrain that I ever crafted was actually rocks. Shout out to Jeremy at Black Magic Craft. If you aren't watching his videos, you are missing out big time. A link will be to his channel in the description below. But as far as the Goblin Arrows Ambush set goes, I would love to have you join me as we finish crafting this thing over the next 3 weeks. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, leave a like and a comment down below, hit the notification bell if you want to know when next week's episode goes live. And speaking of next week's episode, we're going to be talking about fallen logs, so I would love to have you there for that. I'll see you next week.